All right, so we might kick off.
Want me to mute myself?
If you like, yep. So look, I'll just set the scene in terms of for today in this session. Everybody who was invited to this call, you've been PI certified. So this is very exclusively for you if you've gone through that 2-day workshop. The intent of Basecamp is really to get us all back together. You all would have done a different stream at a different point in time. It's got a few objectives. One, to refresh your knowledge, but to also get into a really practical stage with the tool. So you've done the deep science, you understand it, but now how do we apply it in the business for you in your own roles, but maybe how can you take it back into your business and start to apply PI in a really practical way. So it's been designed, I would like it to be full of participation. So I'm going to be stopping and asking you for opinions. We've opened up the chat box in Zoom, and I've actually allowed it for all panelists. So as you start writing commentary or asking questions, you can either respond to each other. So you can keep chatting during the session. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. And ultimately, it's an opportunity for us to all share ideas and information. I think it's important now more than ever, given what's going on. I think everybody's business is in sort of crisis management mode. It's great we've got Sam on the call here. Actually, Sam specialises in change management, and she's also PI certified, so she might have some insights in terms of how their very large organisation is managing this change. So I will kick off. I'll also make sure you get recording versions of this afterwards. And as everybody knows, you've always got access to me all the time. So you can always reach out, give me a call, ask me a question, whatever you need to do. I'm here to support all of you during this time. So we might kick off. And by the way, how exciting is the branding? Basecamp. It's very serious, Basecamp.
I love it.
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll enjoy the wolf theme. So just to keep it sort of fresh and fun. So this session is all about how to adapt your management style. A lot of you on this call are managers of people or managers of projects.
By the way, I'm now concentrating. Sorry, Alicia.
No worries, Olga. I know you can multitask. It's in your profile. So yeah, this is all about how to adapt your management style, and that's probably one of the hardest things to do. But thankfully with PI, you've got some really good data at your fingertips in terms of how you can adapt your management style based on your people. So we will kick into the next question. So I'm going to get you to do something a little bit different. And again, thank you to Sam for this brilliant idea, because I've been living with Menti at the moment. So get out your phones, and I want you to open an internet browser. So whether that's your Google Chrome or it's your whatever you use on your iPhone. And if you just type in Menti, menti.com, and then it's going to say, please enter a code. And you're going to enter in that code 550439, press submit. And then it's going to ask you this exact question. Use a word to describe the worst manager you've ever had. We're really starting off on a deep, dark negative right now. But I'd love for you to type in, you can actually answer multiple times. So you might want to use one word and then put another one. Ooh, liar. See, this is how it works. And you can do multiple responses. Condescending. Yep. Divider. Who said divider? That's a really great one.
That was me, Alicia. The manager we used to have would just set all the supervisors against each other. So we ended up fighting until I realised that's what he was doing, and then we played his game. But yeah, he was an absolute divider.
It's a really interesting word, isn't it? Right? I've not sort of used that word, but that's it. It's those almost playing politics and dividing people, and great word. Micromanager, that's coming up multiple times. Undermines, manipulator, taking credit, fake, bully. No recognition, disabler. Has anybody got an example at the moment where they're seeing some really negative behaviour out of any of their managers, which is not, I would say, usual for that person? Has anybody got an example where they're seeing some bad management play out? Because we are in a crisis, so
think I'll jump in, Alicia. I do know that, given that I'm from a large organisation of over 3,000 employees and the future is uncertain at this stage on how we move forward, a lot of managers are turning to micromanaging, especially working from, which is, in turn really diminishing any trust that you once had with your manager before they were a micromanager.
And I think that's, because people are in that crisis management, they sort of get tighter control. And there's a very fine line, isn't there, at this stage of enabling people, but giving them clarity. All right. So I'm going to move into a more positive question, but thank you, because there's so many great, I think it's very easy for us to think about that sort of worst management style. Next question. So it should refresh on your end. How would you describe the best boss or the best manager that you've ever had? What did they do? How did they make you feel? This is a little bit more open-ended, so you can write more than one word if you want. Like they made me feel, or they did this, or enabler. I'd love to know how. How did they enable you?
Just a quick note, Alicia, we can only do one. It's not letting me put in multiple.
Oh, it says you can submit multiple answers. Hold on.
Then mine's just taken me straight to the next. It says wait for this next slide. Oh my God, how many people want to call me this morning? Sorry, I'll just decline this call as well. I've had 3 calls since the webinar started.
It's refreshed now. I can enter more.
Oh, lovely. Empowering, encourager, enabler, collaborator. Oh, this is good. Enables me to be the best version of myself. Gives honest coaching and support to my development. Help me develop my career. Well, that sounds great. I'd love to work for them.
Yeah, they were a legend.
I like the concept of the best version of myself, because it's like them letting you be you, right? It's not them trying to change you, but it's being the best version of you. How did they do that, out of interest, Olga?
He didn't try to change me. He tried to use my personality and use that to manage my teams. It was when I was learning to be a manager, and he recognised that being a manager is a different set of skills. So he spent a lot of time saying, okay, you like to communicate like this. When you do that, this is the reaction you get. What do we need to think about? And it was interesting because he never, and he would often say, well, you've created this problem because of these reasons, and it helped me see different things. He was just a fantastic manager. He really gave a lot of himself to help me develop.
I love that. I love that he would give you that feedback as well, right? Because he was giving you quite a lot of feedback in that same situation.
And it was hard feedback to hear. And so I guess that's what else made him a really good manager. He gave very challenging feedback, but in a very compassionate way.
I couldn't add a second one, but one of the things I was going to put in there is, the best boss I ever had would ask really challenging questions and wouldn't give you the answer. So he would just sort of sit there, or she would sit there, sorry, and just wait until I figured it out. And if I didn't quite get it, and I guess it's where I learnt my coaching technique, she'd say, okay, but if that wasn't the answer, what else could you think of?
Which is powerful coaching, that asking the powerful question to trigger that deep thinking, which is a very hard skill to have. So that's great. All right, so let me show you where to from here. Let me just change to a new slide.
Alicia, can you hear me? It's Grant.
I can hear you, Grant.
How you going?
Good.
Sorry, I'm in the middle of trying to do homeschooling and patching into this, so that's a challenge. But I was just going to add, I worked for a guy called Michael Lappin. He was the CEO at Wang, back back in the early 90s, and that's when I first got into management. And the thing that we always learnt is there's managers, and that's a label, but really the technique is manager, leader, coach. And just listening to the back end of what people are saying, I think as we go into this crisis, and as we've been fortunate for the last however years, I think this is where true leadership will come out. A lot of people won't have those leadership skills, and I heard micromanagement, etc., and that is management, but they're not being leaders. So leaders are people that do empower and encourage people and give leadership direction. You can't micromanage, especially when people are out dispersed now, and what are they going to do? You can't be following people up every minute to see what they're doing. So true leadership comes in. They can coach people how to do their job, etc. But Michael, as I go back to, actually deployed a manager, leader, coach program, to his management team, and that's a very powerful tool to use, especially in the climate that we've got now.
That's great, thank you, Grant. That's really good input. So I wanted to quickly show you the 4 forces of disengagement that you've probably heard me talk about before, but obviously we need to make sure people have really good job fit. We're not going to talk about that today. They need to be in a really healthy team environment and be in the right culture. Today's session is going to be all about this one piece, which is that management piece. We know that people leave managers, not their jobs. In this environment, we're not expecting people are going to actively be out leaving their jobs, but we're going to see, I think, a spike in mental health issues arise. I think we're going to see spikes in stress levels, anxiety. There's a huge emotional component that's going to be created in this environment at the moment. And I wanted to share with you these 10 things. So recently PI have added in a diagnostic component to the tool that only just got released. And this is an extract from the engagement survey. So in the engagement survey, there's 10 questions here. And for all of us, we've probably been through engagement surveys before. But they've said these are the 10 things that are really critical to that successful manager relationship. And I thought it was really good to bring out, because sometimes it's helpful just to have a list of things that are really important. So it's saying here that my manager helps bring the best out in people. That was your point, Olga, around that best version of myself. My manager keeps me well informed. This is really critical given where we are at the moment in business. Are you keeping people up to date? Now that comes with a whole new world of challenges, because that information is getting updated at a daily basis for most businesses. How are you communicating to your business, but also to your employees constantly? What are your communication channels? What are you committing to doing? People being able to reach out to their manager when they need help or support. Do they feel that they've got access to you right now? Managers' ability to listen when making decisions. Again, Grant, that's probably touching more into that leadership component as well, being able to listen and understand people from different perspectives. Communication, clear expectations, resolving issues, creating opportunity for growth and development, genuine care about me as a person, support in time of change, well, that's now or never. And my manager works and manages with integrity, and that's that values, ethics piece. How do they operate day to day? They're probably watching, if you're a manager, your staff are watching you at this moment. You're probably watching your manager as well. How are they responding? How are they engaging? How are they holding themselves in this time? So I thought that would be really helpful just to go through. You can see those little scales, and it says impact on engagement. They've put some weighting on certain questions, so they know statistically some of these questions have a greater impact on overall engagement of your workforce. And you can see that that third down, I feel comfortable reaching out to my manager when I need help or support, that has the greatest impact on engagement. So if you're going to focus on one thing, that should be the thing right now. If you're only going to do one thing, try and focus on making sure your managers are creating an environment where their people can reach out to them, which people may feel like they can't do if they're being a bit detached from the organisation and working from home. Any commentary from the group on that? Any observations, thoughts, commentary?
I think it's the difficult part at this moment is not only the uncertainty, but then I guess some of those elements of the confidentiality. So, you know, we're playing out several different scenarios which impact lots of different people, but until one of those scenarios actually kicks in, you know, it's hard to try and sort of keep everyone informed, because you don't want to set the panic going, because one scenario is only going to, you know, be an eventuality if other things, either, you know, government forced or changes that we just have to make. And I guess with I guess that's probably one of the areas where I'm trying to sort of look at and focus on is, you know, with my personality type, always chirpy, positive, optimistic. It's actually really hard at the moment, because the moment that I'm not, everyone knows that there's something really serious. And that's proving, you know, that's the one bit that I guess I'm feeling most under pressure on at the moment is, you know, you can't maintain that spirit, and it feels wrong and dishonest to still walk around being all chirpy and optimistic, because we know at any point the tap's turned off and, you know, serious decisions have to be made. So it's finding that balance. But I think, you know, it certainly feels the right one that's highlighted there for me, which is that having people being able to just reach out and talk. And I don't think it's necessarily your own manager either. I think that's other people within the team who might feel more comfortable reaching out to somebody else, a different manager. So we're seeing a bit of that, and we're only a small team.
We're definitely seeing that. We've got actually a team of, we've got everybody's names in a list and a team of people that everybody has to be communicated with about nothing every single week. So we have to all reach out to different people every single week and give them that different voice because where they may feel comfortable voicing their concerns to me, and that was who I was on the phone to prior to beginning this call, there are other people who they just, you know, maybe everything's going wrong, but they just won't tell me, but they'll tell my colleague. So you do need to have different voices doing that effort as well.
Good advice, Olga. See, sometimes the best advice is also coming out of each of us, because you guys are all in your businesses right now. So I've got a unique position because I'm outside of all of your businesses. I'm not in it. Whereas you guys can share some of your really good practices. So that's some good advice from Olga. Thank you. Let me show you. This is the model we work in terms of your business strategy, designing the right teams, hiring against that, and then inspiring your teams. Right now, we're kind of in the grunt of inspiring people. We're probably not going to be doing a lot of hiring, and also designing your workforce. So for some of you at a strategic level, you might be making some, like Luke's saying, some big decisions, and that's off the back of some scenario planning, depending on which scenario happens. Let's be honest, between all of us, roles are going to get cut, right? So what roles, who we're going to need in 6 months' time when we survive this, all those very difficult conversations are probably happening right now for every business. I don't think anyone would be exempt from that. So I wanted to do a quick refresher of factor combinations, which seems like an odd thing to do, but I wanted to do this to highlight to you when we think about managing people, really looking at and reminding you of the vast differences in all of us. So for those of you who can remember back in our factor combination days, we've got the orientation, which is A and B relationship. We've got how do people take action? Are they going to be really proactive and leaning into this change, or are they going to find this change really difficult, slower to respond, really thinking more about the team and how it's going to impact them, how they feel about risk. Now is very risky environment for a lot of organizations. That connection piece, and that's sort of probably where you're coming from, Luke, because you're a high B over C. You want to connect with people. That's also your strength in this time, is your ability to connect with people at a real deep emotional level, and you can do that very quickly, and I've seen you do that, and that's something from a management perspective where you've got an opportunity to leverage the fact that you're quick to connect with people and probably ask them the deeper questions. How people interact, whether they're formal or informal, is going to impact, and also how they feel about rules. The challenging thing in this environment is a lot of the rules have gone out the door, or maybe new rules need to be created. So a quick reminder on orientation. And I thought this would be good because often the thing we forget when it comes to PI is the complexity of the factor combinations. But they have such a great impact on how people turn up and also how people are responding right now. So it might be beneficial for you, for those of you who are managers, to have a look at who you have on your team and pulling out their profiles. Like, just refresh yourself with those. Have a look at their profiles and then think through these 6 factor combinations. Go to your toolkit. I have my toolkit here. And go through these factor combinations and have a look at their profile and see, well, how do you think they might be feeling with this, and what type of conversation can you have with them? So task or people orientated. If you're more people orientated, you're going to be wanting to communicate, be more empathetic during this situation, more collaborative decision making. And then you've got task orientated, which is let's get in, make a decision. Delegation's probably a bit tough and tight. And decision making can be more decide and announce, and it's a little bit harder to take people on the journey. Is anybody seeing any of that play out in their organisation right now? In particular, if you've got maybe a CEO who's A over B, or you've got a leader who's A over B, who's a bit more decide and announce?
Yeah, we've got an interesting sort of mix of the CEO and the general manager, 2 completely different styles. And it's interesting to see how both sort of play out during this sort of time. You know, one's sort of almost not quite withdrawn, but as obviously has changed slightly, and as well. I'm trying not to say the word withdrawn, but I think that's kind of it's how it appears from what they would be, the behaviours that normally demonstrate. And yet the other, who's more of a people, more collaborative, you're seeing a lot more of that. There's although it might not be a high on the social side, are actually spending more time just stopping at a desk, and instead of just asking for the task, is having more of those conversations of just about how people are and what's happening. And I think that's been interesting to sort of see and observe. And I think, you've seen a benefit from people, you know, being involved and being communicated to, and not always about the task or the work or the current situation, but just being involved.
Which is, you know, people are looking up right now. They're looking to their needs as well, a lot of clarity and direction. So it'll come down to whether people are going to be more task orientated. Have you done the task I asked you to do? Or, by the way, I'm going to check in with you at the same time.
Yeah.
Then we move into action. And this is going to be a really challenging one for a lot of people. If you're more responsive, they're a more tentative response to pressure. We know that in terms of they take a little bit longer to understand change, need to understand the why. It wants to be more careful and considerate. The good benefit there is that they listen, usually have stronger listening, natural listening capability, versus our proactive style, who are going to thrive under this environment. They're going to change quickly, decisive, proactive, and just going to want to run 100 miles an hour. They may run too fast, but they may be able to keep up with the constant change that's happening right now. They may forget to listen to people on the journey. So both have their own challenges. So if you sit in either one of these categories, you'll have challenge. The question is, what type of challenge are you going to face? And if you're managing someone of a different profile than you, you need to think about, well, what's important for them? How do they want to take action during this time? And another really interesting thing with this action, if you have a look at that team dynamics in the wheel, there's one that's called take action, and that cuts the data in a way where you can start to see how people take action. I'd encourage you to plot your team on that during this time as well and see what type of insights you can get from it. Perception of risk. So you notice I've done A, B, A, C, A, D, and that's sort of what we did on day 1 of training. We talked about the greatest impact on workplace behaviours. So the A over D, more comfortable with risk. They see risk as an opportunity. Let's run 100 miles an hour. I'm talking to a few CEOs who are like this, and they're leaning into the change very hard, and they're very comfortable right now. the challenge for them is dealing with a workforce who's more risk averse and who's finding this very challenging. So they need a lot of rules and clarity, and they need to understand the details around what's happening, because again, that high formality piece, they need to understand the rules and structure. Connection, this is what we were talking about earlier with Luke in particular. I'll pick on you because you're that quick to connect. You always am okay when I pick on you. Yeah, quick to connect. The challenging thing, as you're saying, is when you lose that upbeat, quick to connect, happy go Larry when you're in a tough time and you're also in the cone of silence with the management team. This is a very challenging time. I remember during the GFC in 2008, we were put in the cone of silence and I had to continue to go and play soccer with people I knew I'd be firing in 3 or 4 months' time. Yeah. And I found that emotionally very challenging because, you know, you're an emotionally committing person and it feels like, so I think I totally relate to that challenge. Versus people who take time to connect, that highly stable, highly patient, more introspective style profile. They need time to think things through. They may need more time to reflect about changes that are happening. So again, you need to take them on the journey with you. Then we have interaction, whether people are more formal or informal. Informal, really thinking about the big picture. Happy to communicate, will do so quickly, will be quite relaxed in style. Delegation will be easy, less likely to fall in that micromanagement trap. The micromanagement we talked about earlier can often come from the more formal style because there's a correct way to do things. Very analytical, very structured. And so there's a real caution around this style of profile in a crisis, because if we all lean into our profiles a bit more during crisis, you may find that they want to hold on to delegation even tighter and be triple checking work and, you know, saying, here are your 5 jobs for today, and then checking those 5 jobs have been done. So if you're seeing some micromanagement happening, have a look at their profiles, see where you think that might be coming from. If you're seeing micromanagement, sit with that staff member, talk to them, pull up their manager's profile, have a look at it together. And then lastly, we have rules. For a lot of businesses, I'm assuming some of your rules have gone out the door. Things have changed. Maybe there are no rules around working from home. Maybe you're madly trying to put those rules in place. Actually, just with you, Olga, just out of interest, because you're in the people and culture team, have you had to put in a new work from home policy? Have you had to put in new rules and structures around how you're working?
We absolutely had to do that. Working in professional services, everybody was on customer site. And one of the biggest challenges we had actually was that our customers were refusing, even though our policy became that we wanted everybody at home, our customers were not allowing our staff to work from home, which I found quite stressful and upsetting, and it was upsetting for those team members. But yes, we've had to put in a lot of policies. Our North American operation, everybody works from home. So that it wasn't really a big strain for them, but for us, it's been hard. And I've spent a lot of time putting into place different measures to help our team, because when you've had 70% of your workforce working on site or in an office all the time, they miss that social interaction. So we have there's a lunchtime meeting every day. There is virtual coffee. I have a coffee shop that I have opened virtually from my kitchen, and we have a coffee. We have a 15-minute coffee break every day, and I post every Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and I post a question. So we've got a topic to talk about. But it's been hard, and putting that stuff together quickly that everybody is happy with has been challenging. We haven't seen productivity drop though, and that's been really encouraging.
That's incredible, really, when you think about it, because that's what usually people assume, right? People working from home can't be productive when they work from home.
100%, but we're not seeing that at the moment, so hopefully it stays like that. I think this will wear out pretty quick though. I think people will get, either they'll really embrace it or they'll just be like, no, I just really need people around me. I need to go back into an office.
And as things escalate, if they do escalate, I think you'll see a lot of personal stress that will come into play as, you know, not to worst case scenario, but if you see people you know getting sick and then you've got family who are unwell, I think that's when productivity will start to get impacted, because you're seeing people having to change what's happening in their life. So I think we kind of have to plan for all different scenarios, and how do we support people who are caring for someone who's sick or needs time off. And again, there's so many scenarios. Yes, Sam.
I think on that note, Alicia, from a change perspective, it's important to realize that as leaders and as managers, we tend to try to separate, if we think of cups, we tend to try to separate our personal and professional capacity into two separate cups. Sorry, my dog's talking to me. So I think what we need to remember is we only have one cup. So whether professional or personal, we'll get to the point where the cup's full and you have change fatigue, and then we go into change saturation where it just empties and you have burnout, fatigue, stress. So I think just to remember, guys, that as a leader, we have to remember that this is just one cup. We can't separate the two into personal stress and professional stress. So the amount of change just comes all at once.
So true. Like unbelievably true. And I think now more than ever, people are, you're right, they separate, oh, that's my home issue, that's my work issue. Well, now you're at home with work. So it's an absolute blend of both, and it's a society thing that's happening as well. So very good advice for all the managers out there as well that are on the call.
And I think the difficulty comes as well with the situation. So it's not just so much working from home. My wife's also working at home, and also attempting to homeschool the kids at home. So that sort of space of I guess the traditional working from home has also changed. So it brings, I think, other complexities, but also I think that realization that we have to be more flexible as well, that is going to happen. So people aren't going to be on it from 8 till 5 working solid. Other things will have to take place, and it's trying to also find I guess the right balance in how we talk to people. And I saw a great one on social, and it just sort of rings so true. It's the guys asked the question, you're quarantined, you have a choice. Do you A, stay at home with your wife or children, or B, and you sort of go, there's like so much sort of truth in it, because you go, well, I can't, if I'm trying to do work, you know, we don't have 4 offices at home where we can all be separate. There's just those natural interactions as well, whether it's, you know, kids, food, you know, needing to eat. It just sort of changes. And I think that realization that we have now, that the working from home, people have to do it, and we have to, I guess, be more comfortable that, you know, then they're not 100% focused 100% of the time. But if we're still able to get stuff done and we're able to continue to move forward, then that's still a much better positive position to be in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sometimes as leaders, we often overestimate the implementation of like a change when you're working from home with your family, like you said. So we just need to take a step back and be realistic about being flexible and what that looks like, but also slow it down. So just because we're all moving to a different environment, we're changing the way we work, we can still move forward, but just perhaps at a slower pace, and respect that the process of change is going to take a little longer for everybody to get used to as well.
And I think you've got to get into a rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely for different profiles. Some people might be loving this. And, you know, I've seen a meme on Facebook where it says, oh, social distancing, that's my life game. So whereas I'm also a high B. So for me, I've got cabin fever right now, not just talking to my dog. So it's very different how we're managing it with each different profile.
And with our families, I think you're right, Luke, in terms of I think working from home, for those of us who've done it for a long time, maybe you've found rhythm. People like Dawn and Jeff, I know in the consulting world, usually we're either out in meetings or we're at home working. We've got some flow, but once you have kids in the background, because schools are closing and we've got our kids at home, you've got new complexities. And if you put that on a mass scale where you've got 5 million people working from home with their kids home, we need to be more tolerant of the fact that there's going to be noise in the background and that we're just going to be distracted and there's other things going on. So I think that tolerant approach is needed. And when we're trying to influence CEOs and managers, we need to educate them on that as well. I wanted to bring to your attention in the bottom of the report that you get in the behavioural assessment report for somebody, at the very bottom it says management strategies. Now might be a really good time to go back to your own profile and have a look at what are my management strategies? What do I need to be successful? What motivates me at work? For some of you, you're going to have things in there that's like high interaction with people. You can see that that is in my profile. It'll be in Luke's and Sam's and a lot of your profiles. Even if you are a little bit more introspective, you still are probably feeling very isolated. So that's also the thing that I wanted to clarify with people. Even if you are lower on the B scale, Olga, you'll be one of these. Just because you're on the moderately low, you'll still feel that social distancing stress.
I am totally stressed. I hate my own company. And I also have a thing, I've never enjoyed working from home because I always feel like someone might question that I'm actually working. So I've never enjoyed it. Now it's even harder because there are big swathes of time where I'm not working because I'm helping somebody with Google Classroom or with, reading eggs, and they need my attention. My husband and I are sort of trying to split the day, but I think, like Luke, was it Luke that was saying, it's really, really challenging to balance it all. Although I spend most of my life on a Zoom call when I am working, so I'm not that lonely, but sometimes I am.
Olga, you made a really interesting point to me the other day about not being able to make as many decisions or it feeling that way. You made a really interesting point the other day. I don't know if you wanted to share that with everybody.
What it is that at work I make micro decisions all day long. People come up and they're interrupting me. I mean, that's my job, but they interrupt me, asking me things all day long, wanting a fix or a solution or a decision made. And here there's no incidental interruptions, right? So there's no making decisions all day long. So it's also, I think, making decisions is part of the way I value myself at work. So when I'm not doing that all the time, I'm finding that quite challenging.
And you need to think about who else are you managing or that's around you. So there's all different challenges. Like that's a whole new challenge that probably I hadn't even thought about that as a challenge for somebody. I think we traditionally go introvert, extrovert, like what challenge might you be facing? Well, actually the dynamic of your job has changed, and the thing that you get value from around making decisions and having an impact, because of that dominance, you want to make an impact, you want to feel purpose, you're not having as much of. So that's where the disengagement piece can kick in. So I'd encourage you to have a look at those management strategies for yourself, because we need to look after ourselves first and really understand that and work out what can I put in place so that I can get some of these things, and then start to look at your teams around you, and maybe getting people in. If you're in an opportunity to talk to other people, is saying, have a look at your profile. What do you need? Let's go through this together. There's no better time than to be pulling these out. You've got the data here. You should be leveraging it as much as you can. The other tool in the kit is the management strategy guide. This is kind of an expanded version of that summary of how that person needs to be managed and interacted with. You'll see there it's like how to manage based on how that person takes action, and how to manage them based on how they view risks and decisions. This is looking at their factor combinations and then predicting how to best manage them based on those interactions. It's the A, B, A, C, A, D. For those of you who picked that up, that's how the management strategy guides work. So pull those out. If you've got a team, I noticed we've got Paul from Taz here. I don't know if you wanted to contribute and whether you've had a chance to do this with your teams, because I know you're a manager of people. But whether you can pull these out and go through those with your team, this would be a really powerful activity to do. Next of tools as well is that development guide. So for those of you who are managing people, have a look at your team's development guide. Not because it's an opportunity to have a development coaching conversation about their career, but in terms of what some of their cautions might be. So if you've got, for them, look at on these self-coaching tips. So for me, think before you speak, think of how your message will be received. So if you're on the higher dominant scale, if you're under a stress environment, they may be a little bit more directive and authoritative. So this is where the coaching piece can kick in and go, how are you finding you're delivering messages? How is your team responding to that? There might be some little gems in there when you have a look at your team's development charts as well. And lastly, having a look at that team strategy, that team dynamics. How is the team naturally communicating? How do they like to communicate? Maybe you need to adapt how you're running some of your virtual things based on their communication style, even how you're structuring those one-on-ones and the meetings based on the team dynamic. And again, having a look at things like taking action, decision-making. Refreshing yourself with your own teams. This is a really powerful opportunity just to go in, spend 10 or 15 minutes, go back in and have a look and see if there's any gems that you can pull out. Any questions on that or thoughts or observations? Has anybody pulled out a PI in the last couple of weeks during crisis?
No.
Are you going to now?
I'm doing it whilst you're talking.
We always say touch a PI every day. Now's a really good time because there's so much valuable information in here, even if you just pull it out and have one better conversation today with somebody and go, hey, I was having a look at your PI and my PI today. I thought it'd be a good time to have a look at it. And I noticed it said this. Maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah, I've been having a look whilst we're on the call, because there are conversations to be had. So even from how much money we're spending on advertising and media, to suddenly start talking to members of the team to go, wow, we're pretty much going to stop that. It's that conversation needs to be delivered in the right style. So I've been just looking at that because my style is normally quite open, upfront. But I have to, I know I need to change that because the people in my team respond, they're different to that, and it's going to come as a surprise and a shock. And then you have that negative spiral that can come from that of, it is all doom and gloom. So I've just been looking at that on making sure when I do sit down and today how do you have those conversations?
And having a very empathetic conversation, knowing and preempting how they might be feeling and even acknowledging that can be really powerful. And that will be your strength, Luke, because you're a very empathetic person. So lean into that. Lastly, I have a quick summary because I've been getting a lot of questions around how do I even have a conversation with someone remotely? What do I do? What should I be asking? What questions other than how you doing should I ask? And what I did is I had a look at that management, those 10 things, and I tried to boil them down into some of those ideas for things to ask. First of all, you should check in with them. How are you doing? But really checking in, how are you finding working from home? How are you feeling? How is your family? Ask personal questions if you feel comfortable, to really connect with people during this time and understand and listen. Don't make it about you. Listen. Ask more questions so that you can understand where they're at. And if necessary, take some notes and next time you talk to them, check in and say, oh, how's your sister doing? Or depending on what they brought up, you should be trying to remember these things and recognize them and follow up. Give them an update on the business climate, the business and the climate, I should say. So your job is to provide them with clarity, or as much clarity as you can. So, Luke sort of alluded to that sort of cone of silence a lot of us managers are in right now, giving them as much information as you can without breaking confidence. Thinking about what information they need to do their job and to be enabled right now. What's relevant to them? They may not need to know what's happening 6 departments away, but for them and their job, here's what's relevant. Set clear expectations of what's expected of them in a non-micromanagement way will be my disclosure on that. People really need to understand what's expected of them, and providing as much clarity as you can and as much certainty. Some people will need rules and structure and other people won't. So it's your job to look at their profile and work out, what does this person need in this environment? Do they need lots of rules and structure because they're a high formality person? Or do they need a more relaxed, informal environment? They just need to know what's expected of them at a high level, the goal, the vision, the outcomes, or do they need a bit more of a roadmap? Asking them, do you have any current roadblocks? What's going to stop you from achieving some of these things? Can you foresee any hurdles? Maybe it's not now, but it's in the future. Let's start to think about the future, even if that future is a week away. What roadblocks might you have? What things have you thought about? Getting your coaching hat on, asking them more questions. What are there, for those of you familiar with the GROW framework, thinking through their options as well. What options do you have? You may not have a lot of options in terms of your working from home and your space, but what options do you have around technology and carving out a few hours of the day where you are uninterrupted? Like Olga's saying, sort of tag teaming with her husband to work out who's going to manage which parts of the day with kids, trying to help them put some plans in place. Is there any learning they want or need to do during this time? Some people are struggling with the technology component. I sat on a webinar yesterday and the person was like this for the whole webinar, if you can see me, and it was just really awkward. I was like, why is your face so close to the screen? For the whole hour, I was like, I don't need to see this much of your face. It was just a lot of face for an hour. So helping people find out what challenges they have. Maybe their audio equipment's not working. Maybe they don't have headphones. Like, it could be very job specific, or it could be working from home specific. And if we've got people who are slowing down in their job, and Luke, I'm thinking of you if you've got your advertising team that might have a pull back on their duties and responsibilities. If you're going to retain them and hold on to them, what could you be doing to grow them, to prepare for the other end of this? And is there any learning opportunities or growth or online courses? We're seeing a huge boom in online learning right now across all different providers. What can they do for free? What could they do that's a little bit more long-term? What could they be doing for their own growth during this time if they've got capability and capacity? And letting them know that you're available and when you're going to check in next. So letting them know that you're ultimately available for these periods of time, what your schedule looks like, and then really confirm another check-in with them. They're my 6 steps. Does anybody else have any check-in techniques or tips that they've been using with their staff or teams, or they've been coaching their managers through? I'll take suggestions.
I've been doing just random check-ins through people on Skype from all different teams, not just my own team, just to make sure. I can't remember if it was Olga that said it before, just having that different voice. I've been also making sure that I put on my camera to make them feel like they have a face and it's not just a voice as well. But also, so today at our 3 p.m. team check-in, I'm doing loud t-shirt day. So everyone's put on a loud t-shirt and we're just going to check in for a Friday afternoon, and we might have some R&B play in the background on Fridays.
Of course it's R&B for you, Sam. Love it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just about making them feel like they still have that connection and making it a little bit more fun instead of being so serious and dark as this time is quite scary.
We've actually made it a rule, Sam, that when you're having your Zoom calls or Skype calls, that you have to have your camera on.
Yeah, same.
And that's made it, it's good because you are engaging. One of the things that we did when you were talking just before about what the roadblocks are is we actually sent out a really simple Qualtrics survey to the team about what are the roadblocks. Do you have a suitable chair? Do you have a desk? You know, doesn't matter how many times I've told them go and borrow stuff from the office. It was only when we sent out the survey that more people came forward saying, oh, I actually need a chair. I don't have an office chair. I don't have a desk space, or I've got 5 kids and we only have the kitchen table and they're all homeschooling. Like, what am I meant to do? And You hear a lot about people's families at this time.
It's all very valid too. That's a good idea to do a check-in survey too.
It was of all the surveys that I have done in this organisation, I had the highest level of engagement on this one, and we did it really. It was very non-confrontational, so it was like, how are you feeling? And we did it based on weather, sort of like, you know, slightly rainy, very stormy, hot and sunny, whatever it was. So we did it. It was very easy to do. It only took a few minutes, and we had huge level of engagement.
Did you make it anonymous, or did you work out who it was so you could check in with those people? How'd you do that?
No, this was the only survey we've done that we didn't make it anonymous.
Nice.
And everyone was still very happy to participate. So I've been going through where I would say areas of concern are on that survey and going through and reaching out to that person specifically and saying, have you gone and got a chair? Did you get a monitor from the office? You know, if you're telling me you don't have fast enough internet, well, I'm giving you permission, go buy a dongle, like all those sorts of things.
That's such good advice, Olga. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely.
I'm full of it. What can I tell you?
I'm actually on Microsoft Forms thinking, I'm going to create one right now.
There you go. I love some sharing.
Hurrah!
That is basically a wrap, everybody. So I'm going to be running Basecamp every month. I'm going to be running webinars in between that you'll be kept in the loop with, which aren't as closed as this. This is really closed for just PI certified people. If you've got any ideas for what you want from a content perspective in the coming weeks, you can shout it out now, or you can send me an email. We have a schedule of things that we think will be really topical and relevant when it comes to how do you embed the PI information like this is. So we've got components of PI, but then looking at it practicality, sharing ideas. It will very much be similar to this format. Does anybody have any thoughts or ideas or what they'd like to know more of, or maybe need tips on, or think we should discuss as a community?
I quite like the just even some of that idea sharing. You know, what are other people doing? What's working? I think on the drive in today, because there's a number of us are still sort of in the office. Fairly, we all have our 4 square meters. Not a huge team, but even then, just I was thinking about, well, next week when majority are going to be all at home, is just catching up with the guys who I probably end up with in the lunchroom with, because I tend to eat at 12:30, and although it's not a set time or anything, actually just think about those 2 or 3 people who I'd normally sit down with and just, arrange like I think it was Olga or Sam said about the coffee shop, that sort of, let's just all just touch base again and just have those same daft conversations that we might have in the office. Let's talk about our horoscopes or
what you watched on Netflix. Yes.
Yeah.
I do need Netflix movies, yes.
Yeah, Netflix recommendations. You can start your own like Netflix clubs. I think the idea sharing is good.
Yeah, the idea sharing is great, because I know I've been jumping on LinkedIn trying to figure out what other businesses are doing as well, to try and, I've got 3,000 staff, water and sewer, roads, transport. I've got guys that don't even have technology. So keeping in mind social distancing and how I can still connect and, gather the frontline staff as well for the bigger organizations is critical.
Anybody else? Any ideas? I know I've got Anita, Grant, Paul, Georgia on the call as well with Jeff. Any ideas, thoughts? What you'd like more of, less of?
I was going to suggest everything Luke said, but he beat me to it, so I'll just stay muted. No, but I think the reality is I've got one client who's just implemented work from home, and as we're talking through this, a whole bunch of ways that PI could be used for the management team just to support them to have those conversations. So I think just having that chat about next month about what's worked, what could be done differently would be really good.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff.
I don't know if it's more regular, Alicia. thinking a month away, like with the circumstances and how quickly everything's changing. A month, I know for the disclosed ones, but perhaps like an open forum sooner.
Yeah, I think I've got a session on next Friday, which is supercharging your communication skills. And we're going to be talking about how do you leverage your communication skills during this time. But I think the amount of connection that we have, we probably might move this even to fortnightly, so we can get you guys chatting, communicating, sharing ideas. My job is to sort of build the community as much as we can, because I think there's so much learning we can do across our businesses, because we have different types of businesses, but we all have the same challenges around people. So we might as well share in this great community that we've got. So thank you, everybody. And please feel free to reach out, ring me, email me. I'm here for all of you.
The next session, I'll do my hair so I can turn my camera and take off my, not wear pajamas maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Lovely talking to you all.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.